Ticket number 17089. Endpoint, get action items for an object. So if we come to SLM and we come to the Loper module, if we come down and expand Loper worksheets and select a worksheet, on the summary template, we scroll down to the potential risk reduction measures. We can see here that we've got some action items. So let's use this one, February the 27th, 2026, 0042. If we come across to Postman, we look at the object related action items. We're going to use a get command, which looks at the objects, the unit, the hashtag for the unit, /action items. We'll give it a type ID of Loper action items, and we'll select the name of the action item, which was February the 27th, 2026, and run that. And you can see here we've returned the information for that action item. Let's now move to the HAZOP module. Open the gas tab unit. Select this HAZOP facilitation study. Come to the facilitation template. And let's go to the recommendations list. Inside here, we've got a recommendation Rec 123 with the related action item, April the 3rd, 2020, 0034. So let's come back to Postman. And we're going to use the get command object /HAZOP recommendations, the hashtag value /action items. Let's give it a type ID of HAZOP action items. And then the label being the name of the action item, April the 3rd, 2020, 0034, and run that. And now you can see we've returned the relevant data for that HAZOP action item. Ticket number 17078, adding HAZOP configurable text fields. So in the global module, we're adding 10 text fields labeled configurable field 1 all the way through to configurable field 10. And we're going to add the ability to order all selectable fields for the HAZOP facilitation tab. Apply these changes to enterprise, company and site. And in the HAZOP module, the user is going to have the ability to order these fields in their view and save for future use, just as they can do now. Users can hide fields that have been selected in the global module, but cannot add fields that have not been selected in the global module. So if we come to the global module, we come to the site. If we look under module configuration, we have HAZOP deviations and scenarios fields here. If we scroll to the bottom, we can see we've got the configurable fields 1 through 10. So if we now edit this and scroll down, let's select configurable field 1 and 2 and save those changes. Let's now go across to the HAZOP module and select a HAZOP study and come to the facilitation template. If we scroll to the right, we can see configurable fields 1 and 2. So let's just enter some data in here. And check to see those changes saved successfully. So let's now add configurable fields 4 and 5 using the settings at the enterprise level. And to enable this feature at a specific site, we need to disable any selected field configuration at the site level in order to use the configuration at the enterprise level. So if we come back to the global module and the site, let's uncheck all of these fields. And save those changes. We can now see that none of these fields are selected. Now let's come to the enterprise level. Here we can see the HAZOP deviations and scenarios fields again, with the configurable fields at the bottom. So let's edit and add fields 4 and 5 and save those changes. Let's come back to our HAZOP and refresh the template and scroll across. We can now see this has picked up configurable fields 4 and 5 from the enterprise level. Let's now rename one of these header labels using the HAZOP deviations and scenarios fields drop-down option. So let's come to the system module. Under the drop-downs, HAZOP deviations and scenario fields. Filter for the configurable fields. Let's edit this field and change the value to configurable fields 4 sprint. Click Save. Let's now come back to the global module and refresh the enterprise overview. Scroll down. We can see configurable field 4 has been renamed. Let's now come back to the HAZOP module and click on a HAZOP study. Come to the facilitation template. Scroll across. And we can see configurable field 4 has been renamed to configurable field 4-sprint. Ticket number 17059, user admin updates. So if we come across to an SLM instance, I'm currently logged in as myself, an administrator. So if I come to the system module, under manage user accounts, if I add a new account, under account type now, we only have two options, regular user and system administrator. System administrators can create any type of account, whereas regular users can only create or edit regular user accounts. So let's log out and log back in with a regular user account. Let's come back to the system module and manage user accounts, add an account. And because we're signed in as a regular user, the only account type we can create is a regular user. And 4 new fields are also added to the admin tools permissions at the account level. These fields are only displayed when creating or editing a regular user account. So if we scroll down here, we've now got checkboxes to create template from object, delete and cascade objects, customize templates, and download datasets for objects. These fields are available by default for administrative accounts and are available under the admin tools options dropdown. So if we do a search for Sprint user, which is a regular user account, as we can see here, we can see the 4 options here for the admin tools option dropdowns. So let's edit those. And we'll remove customize templates and the delete and cascade objects option. We'll just leave create template from objects. Click save. Let's now log in with that Sprint user account. Let's go to the instrumented systems module. Under a unit. Under the admin tools dropdown, we should only have the one option, which is to create template from object. Ticket number 17047, Sil Calc Grid hidden input ID column. So after loading the Sil Calc architecture template, the first columns of inputs, outputs and logic solver tables do not show. The only way to show them is by reloading the table. So if we take a look at this video before for the Sil Calc architecture template, if we scroll down to inputs here, we can see that the first column is the parent input voting groups rather than the input ID. If we refresh the table, we can now see the input ID. So now that the changes have been made, if we come to instrumented systems and we select a SIF, let's come to the Sil Calc architecture tab and scroll down to our inputs. We can see that the first column is now input ID. If we come down to logic solvers, we can see the logic solver ID is the first column. And for outputs, the first column is now the output ID. Ticket number 17005. Tooltip appears floating over the grid when the chart is scrolled out of view in graphic grid reports. So in the graphic grid reports, when hovering over a row in the grid, the graph tooltip is displayed as expected. However, if the chart is not visible due to scrolling, the tooltip still appears, but it is shown floating over the grid rather than over the chart. So if we take a look at this video before the changes were made, if we scroll over the chart, we can see the tooltip as expected. However, if we scroll over the grid, we can see the tooltip incorrectly displaying without the chart being at least 80% in view. So now the changes have been made. If we come to the Instrumented Systems module and the function type summary, we select a site and a unit and generate the report. If we just hover over the chart, the tooltip is displaying as expected. However, if we scroll down and the chart is more than 80% hidden, then the tooltip is no longer displayed. Let's just scroll up so as more than 80% is visible. And we can see we now have the tooltip displaying again. Ticket number 17004. Data category axis label overlap when space is limited in a series chart. So in series charts that use data as category axis values, the axis labels are not rendering correctly when there is limited horizontal space. The data labels overlap each other, making them hard to read and causing visual clutter. If we take a look at this image, we can see the issue. So if we come to the System module, take a look at Activity Reports, select a user. If we now minimize the space that this particular chart is using, we can see that the axis is rendering in accordance with the limited horizontal space. Ticket number 17000. Missing toolbar in multiple system module interfaces. So several interfaces in the system module are not displaying their toolbars. Instead of the expected toolbar, only an empty space is shown. The affected interfaces are Relabel Objects, Rebuild Search Index, Rebuild AI Search Index, and Rebuild Document Index. So if we take a look at this image from SLM before the changes, if we look at the red rectangle, we can see that the issue is that there's an empty toolbar rendering with no items within it. Hence the blank space and the impression that there's an error in the interface. So now the changes have been made. If we come to the System module, and we come to Relabel Objects in the object tree, the gap has been closed between the tabs along the top and the breadcrumb trail. If we come to Rebuild Search Index, the gap has been closed here. Rebuild AI Search Index and Rebuild Document Index. We can see that all the toolbars with no items within them have been removed. Ticket number 16997. Unable to download documents in the related document tables under the Alarm Function Requirements tab. So in the Alarm Function Requirements tab of the alarm, the related documents grid of any section is not working as expected. Users are unable to download any of the associated documents. The download link or action does not respond or fails to start the download. If we come to the Instrumented Systems module and we select an alarm, on the Alarm Function Requirements tab, we scroll down to the bottom, we can see the tables here in question. If we focus on the alarm testing procedures, we can see here that we have a document. If we now click the download button, we can see that that document has been successfully downloaded.